Hello, friends. It's Monday, April 25th. You know what time it is. Tonight at Program, Major Pain, Firestarter, Take It to Heart, Higher Power, and Last Straw, Connecticut Straight Edge. I love Connecticut hardcore. I'm so happy to have been able to put this together. Thanks to all of my friends who have helped out. It wouldn't have been possible without all of you. So for anyone who's listening to this today at this time of the recording, please roll out to Program tonight. It's going to be crazy. It's going to be fun. And I want everyone to come out and have a good time. So please do yourself a favor, get there early. I'm not sure how crazy it's going to be, but I'm hoping it's wild as fuck. And I hope that everybody has a blast because I'm super excited and I can't believe that it is finally here. So shout out to all my friends in Last Straw who were super down to make this work because it definitely means a lot. You can obviously see right here if you're watching the video, I'm just so excited. But on to today's episode. It is brought to you by From Within Records, and still late summer. Envision will be releasing a 12-inch EP, which I can't wait for. I love that band. I love being straight edge, and I am so excited to hear new music from them. Also, if you are familiar with the label, you definitely know about the Wanting Unity comp, but late summer 2022, the final installment in the trilogy, which I'm sad about, but I'm also really stoked on the lineup. Not One Truth. If you haven't had a chance to listen to their new music yet, please do yourself a favor and go check out their new stuff. Hellbound, Never Again, C4, Chemical Fix, Search for Purpose, Stiff Meds, Fool's Game, Contention, Buried Alive, Live It Down, Gridiron, Adrian, Broken Vow, Nothing But Enemies, Submit, Killing Me, and Wreckage. I love Wreckage. You can obviously tell if you're watching the video, I'm wearing a Wreckage shirt. Thank you, Noah. And then also right above me, we got another legendary Wreckage shirt. We're repping Connecticut hardcore super hard today, but shout out to Wreckage. Shout out to the comp. Look forward to that. And if you're not listening to the From Within Records podcast, they just dropped episode 7 with Will Kalin. He plays in Never Ending Game, plays in Gridiron, from the PEA to the D. So if you haven't had a chance to listen to that, or if you're not listening, please go boot up your Spotify, your Apple Podcasts, your Stitcher, wherever the hell you listen to your podcast, and go subscribe to the From Within Records podcast. I love what they're doing over there. It's awesome. And if you're not following From Within Records on social media, go boot up your Twitter, your Instagram, click that follow button to stay up to date on all the current news. And like I always say, please support From Within Records because they support us. And also, if you're looking for high quality merchandise, go hit up my friends over at Good Fortune Printing out of Wilkes-Barre, Pennsylvania. They do a lot of awesome stuff. If you're seeing Anxious on their current full US, a lot of their merch was printed by Good Fortune. If you're about to see Ikulu on their run, all that cool merch is printed by Good Fortune Printing. All my collab shirts have been printed by Good Fortune Printing, and I am very happy to be working with them and looking forward to working with them in the future. So please go follow them on Instagram. Click that follow button. You can go follow them at Good Fortune Printing. And if you want to get in contact with them, you can email them at contact@goodfortuneprinting.com. Super awesome people to work with, and I am very stoked on their business. So please support them any way you can. On today's episode, we had to track down Jonathan from Texas, runs Sunday Drive Records, which I'm definitely a fan of. So many awesome bands. I love Broken Vow. I love The Arrival Note, All Under Heaven, Squint, shout out St. Louis. So there's so many awesome bands, and it was cool for me to finally be able to sit down and talk to Jonathan and pick his brain. So for anyone who is not familiar with the label, I hope this is a great way to get you interested and familiar. So please strap in, enjoy this conversation. Without further ado, welcome Jonathan to the show. All right, and we're live. Welcome to the podcast, Jonathan. How's it going?
Hey, doing good, Jamie. How are you?
I'm doing great. I'm stoked to finally have you on the podcast. I've been a fan of the record label for a really long time. So I'm just stoked to finally be sitting here and speaking with you.
Thanks. Yeah, I appreciate it. And likewise to listen to your show pretty often. So it's cool to be on here.
Thank you. I definitely appreciate that. And for people who are listening who may not be familiar with who you are, can you talk about who you are and where you come from?
Yeah, of course. So my name's Jonathan. I run a record label called Sunday Drive Records. Currently is based in Houston, Texas, but I grew up in San Antonio, Texas. And the label has existed since 2015. So going on 7 years this summer, actually. And yeah, it's been a fun ride so far, and there's a lot of exciting stuff planned in the future that I am excited about and like finally able to let people see.
And I'm just curious, going back to 2015, where did you get
Yeah.
the idea to start the label?
Yeah. So I was like in a local band in high school in San Antonio, and around that time, so this is like just to put into context, this is around 2012 when I started this band, and I was going to shows in high school, like as a freshman probably. So I got introduced to like the local music scene at kind of a young age, I guess. It's like 13, 14. But I ended up discovering hardcore through those local shows, and kind of opened my eyes to a whole new world. And as mainly like the DIY aspect of it, like I didn't realize that you can just book your own show, put together a lineup and do everything yourself. So that was very eye-opening to me. So after going to shows and getting involved, playing in a band, I had to kind of like teach myself everything from the band aspect. So for example, making a flyer for a show, I taught myself like Photoshop, and would like make something that if we needed it, album art and stuff like that. So I got introduced to that part of like the DIY aspect. And then yeah, so from being involved in music, playing with local bands, there was a couple of friends. Sorry if you hear that, it's my cat like meowing
Just
in the
fine.
background. Yeah, so I met some friends in Frontage and New Methods. We used to play like house shows together and stuff. And I realized that San Antonio didn't really have a record label to like give a platform to these artists. And so a lot of it was on the local aspect, and I wanted to just help out and shine a light on the local bands because I thought they were really cool and they were my friends. So in 2015, I was in college. I moved away from San Antonio. I went to Texas A&M, and from there, it was ending my freshman year, and I was like, I think I'm finally just gonna do this. Like, I've had the idea in my head, since then, since playing that band in high school, and I just decided to do it. And I reached out to Frontage, and that was our first release. They were going into the studio, and we put that out. And ever since then, it's been going into something I would never have imagined it going into.
For sure, that's awesome. I like the idea of wanting to do something local, especially when there wasn't really something going on at that time, because that takes a lot of work, right? For somebody to step up and do something, especially when it's not something that's very common. Because obviously, I feel like sometimes people could be very like judgmental and kind of look at something and be like, wow, this is weird. They're starting a new label. And it could either go right where you could have people who are super down for you and give you a ton of support, or it could people just be like, kind of shy about it, not really sure, what to do. And they kind of just watch from afar and wait till it's like, okay to, support the label because they see that it's actually going somewhere and it's not some like, joke thing.
Yeah, no, that's a really good point. I know like you'll see like DIY labels start up every so often and then they kind of just disappear. That was kind of my fear when I started it. I was like, I want to make sure like to keep on going, try to do as much as I can. But shout out to everyone who did start a label and even just put out one thing. Like that's cool too. But it is just like taking that first step. It's definitely scary, like doing anything new.
100%. And you mentioned it started in 2015. Here we are in 2022, so that's 7 years. Creeping up on a decade. So I think that's awesome that you've been able to stick around for that long. Because especially in our scene, things move so fast. So many bands come and go. Even with record labels, zines. For people being involved in this, like you could miss something, in the blink of an eye. So for you to have been around for 7 years so far, that's pretty awesome.
Thanks. Yeah, I appreciate it. I've definitely had the moments where I'm like, I think it's time to quit, and I'm glad I kind of went through that and kept doing it, because I wouldn't be where I am now with the label, which is kind of what I envisioned in the beginning at this stage. And not to say like Sunday Drive is huge or anything, but it's just like at a level now where I kind of feel the appreciation, and like I felt for like a lot of years it was kind of going unnoticed and not getting that much attention. But so it's kind of like pushing through that, those thoughts that you get in your head are like, oh, does anyone care about this? Like, is it even worth it? But I'm glad I pushed through, because I got to meet so many cool people and work with so many talented bands.
100%. And I feel like that's one thing that a lot of people kind of suffer from, is they'll start something new, whether it be a zine, a record label, and they kind of get jaded when they don't find like instant success and they don't get that gratification right away, and then they kind of realize like, oh shit, this isn't as easy as I thought, and you have to put in work, and these things take time. So for the people who are able to kind of weather that storm and stick around to see the fruits of their labor, I think it's really important for people to know that there may be some dark times, but it makes those moments where you get those milestones or those goals that you set for yourself that much better.
Yeah, definitely. And I guess like in today's society, we're all kind of victim to like wanting that instant gratification, just because like of social media and everything, information is so readily available to us. So that I'm sure like that played a part like years ago. But it was, I kind of tried to just disconnect a little bit and like refocus on all the details and like reignite the passion that I had in the beginning of why I was doing this. And I think that drives, the influence to do the label so much more. Just like taking a step back and like looking like, man, even looking back, like I got to do one release, like that was cool. Like my friends didn't have to put out their record on my like new label. Like that's a huge risk. I understand from like a band, so yeah, I'm just glad that I've kept going, and very appreciative of everyone who has like stuck around or even just discovering the label. I definitely appreciate all the support.
For sure. No, I get it. I sometimes wonder how people who start these new labels convince bands to join, right? Because that's a lot of trust that they have to put into them, because obviously it's like a whole new venture, and just the representation for the label and the band, people are gonna be like, okay, this is weird, this is something new. And especially for like an established band, right, to leave like and it doesn't even have to be a super well-known label, but for them to go to something brand new, I just feel like that's just a risk. And it's cool when I see bands willing to take that, even knowing that it's going to be not even like necessarily like an uphill battle, but it's just going to be like a whole new adventure that isn't guaranteed to be a success, but it's like them wanting to bring something new to the table, not just for themselves but for the label, and to bring like some new vibes for the whole scene as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, I mean, just from putting myself in like a band's perspective, like that, I totally understand that it's a difficult thing to do, to attach your music to some brand that you might not be that aware of, speaking from the perspective of a new record label. So having that, like, establishment in your local community, or just being friends with the artist or whoever you're working with, I think definitely helps kind of, push through that discomfortness maybe that might come with joining the label.
100%. Like I somehow got myself in this weird position where I speak to a lot of bands, right? And I've become friends with a lot of people in bands. So I have people reach out from time to time, wanting to, help get in contact with the labels, which I'm totally, down to do. But then there's even like some times where like my friends who are in bands that I believe in, who I try to fight for to get on labels. And it's just like a whole weird process because, when it gets down to business, right, and the money gets involved, because it's like an investment if you're going to be working with these bands and putting out records, tapes, t-shirts, hoodies, whatever, and that's where you kind of realize like, okay, cool, like it, you might like the music, but you might not like it that much when you have to get to the point where you have to invest like X amount of dollars, not knowing if you're going to see a return. You might even take a loss, and that's where I'm kind of like, okay, like I get it, but I'm just trying to help out like my friends when they ask. But when I get to that position, I'm like, damn, this is kind of like this weird, not really like dark side, but it's just like this weird spot where I'm just like, okay, like I know they would fit well on the label in my opinion, but then when it just comes down to it, it's just like, yeah, like when it doesn't work out, I get bummed out for both, because I've been in the situation where I've like pitched the band. And like I have no business relations with these bands, right? Like I've got offered things behind the scenes and I'm like, nope, I don't want anything. I just, you ask, I'll help, whatever. And I've seen in the situation where the label turns it down, but then the band lands somewhere else and they turn it to be like really successful. And I was like, damn, imagine that success on, if it would have been on like the original label that they wanted it to be on, it would have been such a cool fit. And who knows, maybe it wouldn't have worked out the same way. Maybe I'm just like rewriting history, but it's just weird. Because there's only been a few bands where I fought for behind the scenes where it didn't work out, but that band still managed to get success. So it's just like, damn, weird spot.
Yeah, for sure. I feel like a lot of the times, like if the music is good, that eventually that moment will come for the band. But as far as like, a record label taking a chance on a band, like, yes, you're absolutely right. There is like a lot of money, not only money involved, but also time and commitment to making the release work. So yeah, that's also like a tough thing to do if you're running like a DIY label. Like I started probably not in the best time. For example, like I was in college and didn't have any money, so I was working just like a part-time job and saving what I can in order to press like 50 cassette tapes at the time. So just doing that, at that time, it was a lot for me, but I'm glad I did it because it needed to be done. That was the first step in order to make something come to life.
100%. No, sometimes it takes sacrifice to make things happen. And I feel like that's why there's certain people in this world who will find that success, because they're willing to make those sacrifices and take that extra step to make it happen, right? Because I've seen so many people who get to the point where like, okay, cool, like I really want this, they're set up for it, but when it comes time to put in the work, they kind of realize like, oh, this isn't really what I wanted. And then that's where those people start to fall off. You see like the whatever, the zines, the shows, the bands, whatever, just start to become inconsistent, and then they just slowly fade off. But then you find out that the people who are way more consistent and want it more, those are the ones that tend to stick around and kind of rise to the top.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, all of that hard work or all of the time that you put into something, eventually, most of the time, would result in something. I understand there's sometimes where like things just don't play out and you have like the worst luck. But just keep pushing through. To anyone listening, like whatever creative venture that you're on, I mean, if it doesn't make sense to you right now, and if you really want to do it in the future, I definitely recommend just to keep going.
Yeah, for sure. I started this, and I used to try to find every excuse to not do an episode, just because I was like, because I felt like back in the day I was just kind of like just not sure where I really like wanted it to go, and even to this day I just kind of just don't really have like real direction. I just kind of reach out to people that I just want to talk to, but I don't have like, all right, this is where I want the podcast to be next month. It's just kind of like, no, I'm just going to reach out to people who I want to talk to, and hopefully they, feel the same. But yeah, like early on, I was just like so unsure, and even like my peers, because it was so so foreign to everybody, because nobody in our circle was doing anything like this, and it wasn't even like that common like back in 2017. And like it was hard.
Yeah, you're right.
It was hard to get
Yeah.
people to want to support what I was doing, and even my friends would like listen, and like they would make fun of me, but I could tell that they weren't really sure where I was going with this either. But then just over time, it just slowly became me telling random stories about my day, and then just having people on, and it just kind of turning into this like interesting thing where people actually like subscribe and listen to consistently. And when I realized that people actually enjoy these conversations that I've been having, it's like, all right, cool. This is like a fun way to be able to give back to the scene, but also like a really fun thing for me to be able to talk to these people that I admire.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I know it's like in anything you do, there's always that like awkward phase in the beginning where like it's not cool. Like what you're doing is usually not cool. Like it's not good. So I mean, looking back at the label today and seeing what I was doing at the time, I think I was like 19 or something. Like I'm like, it's kind of like cringy, I guess. Like, just like the way you're presenting the label online and in person. But at the same time, while it might be cringy today, like there is that sort of like appreciation for it still, like you're still fond of the memories that those early like stages, and I think that's cool. And like the way you're talking about like just telling random stories by yourself and your friends, like not really knowing what you're doing, like yeah, I can definitely relate. Like when I was starting the label, like no one really understood what a record label was, or like really got it in the beginning. So yeah, it's kind of funny.
Yeah, and I let people know like, hey, those early episodes are still up. I don't I don't encourage you to go listen to them, but they're there so people can see that there's like a true progression from when I started doing the podcast to where it is now. And that's another way for me to show people as well that this shit takes time, because like those episodes have the date stamped on it. It's not something that I did overnight. It's been something that I've been working at day in, day out, and it's been like really consistent. And I think that's what has kind of just like separated me from the rest, is that I've been able to manage to have interesting conversations so consistently over the years. And I'm just like fortunate enough that people still care enough to want to come on the podcast and to still listen. So I always tell people that I'm very humbled and appreciate everybody who gives their time to come on, and everybody who takes the time to listen throughout the day, like with whatever they're doing.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, those all those early like Instagram posts and stuff are still there. Same thing. I don't encourage you to really go back, but it's there, and I think the progression is important, or like the journey to where you are now is important for others to see and kind of appreciate.
100%. Okay, so the label started back in 2015, and which point was it where you started to actually like, this is a thing, right? Like you put out the first band. Did you see success, or was it like a couple bands later where it kind of hit you like, okay, this is something that people are interested, and I want to actually take this really serious and keep it going?
Yeah, that's a good question. Let me see. I'm trying to think of like those first releases. The first like 10 or so got not so well, like as far as like attention goes. But those first bands still had like their friends like buying stuff from a label they didn't know, and that's really cool. Like it's cool to see bands' friends supporting them, even though it's like at a different, like a brand new record label website store that they've never shopped at before. Like also putting that trust into just shopping on a new website. I understand that too. But I would say that first release would probably be the I Was Afraid Lonely Frontier 7-inch. That one kind of rings a bell in my head because that was the first 7-inch vinyl that we did, and that was like a big step for me. And at the time, I think this is probably 2016 or 2017, and they were like touring pretty heavily, and that definitely like helped with the release, like being able to push some records out, and the band being able to have records on tour and selling them. I've got to like hang out with them at shows when they would come through Texas and stuff, and those are like really cool times. I miss that band. If you haven't listened to I Was Afraid, definitely check them out. If you like Hum, they're a great like band.
Okay. And I'm just curious, for the support for the label early on, like how was that? Were you just seeing it like locally, or was like the online presence, kind of open your eyes to seeing that there was more support coming out like outside of Texas?
Yeah. So for the first the first release was Frontage, which is a San Antonio band, and most of the support was directly from San Antonio or like surrounding areas. And then the next couple actually branched outside of Texas. So, for example, New Lives was our second release. That was a band from St. Louis, Missouri. And then Youth Pool was from Kansas City, Missouri. So we kind of branched out to Missouri around that time. So we started getting, orders from there, new followers when we would announce a band and stuff. So yeah, and then it started for sure in Texas, but slowly as like we would find new bands, it started branching off into wherever else.
And how'd you find that band in St. Louis? I feel like St. Louis is a pretty interesting scene because there's not like a whole lot going out there. But I know you just signed a newer band from there. Was that announced today?
Yeah, that was today. I was Squint.
Yeah, shout out Squint. I have a friend in Squint, so shout out to that band. Awesome music. If anybody hasn't had a chance to check out Squint, go do yourself a favor and check out Squint and support St. Louis. Yeah,
definitely. It's funny because that band that I mentioned, New Lives, from St. Louis, two of the members are in Squint. So that's kind of the connection that we have right now, where they were literally SDR 002, and now they're like SDR 074 or so.
That's awesome. That's cool that you're able to maintain that relationship, because here like sometime later, new band and that connection is still there, and they're able to make it onto the label. So that's cool, and I think that says a lot for someone to kind of join back the label on the label with their newer project, because that means that the relationship was good. They had to have had a decent time on their first outing in their other band. It wasn't like a nightmare.
Yeah, definitely. It's always cool, like when you get to work with the people that you work with early on, like in the future. So a lot of the times, there'll be just a new project or a new band someone's working on, and they'll let me know, and sometimes I'll put it out, or sometimes I'll just help them. Otherwise, like say if I can't do it right now, I'll just recommend like another label, or where I think it could fit well. But yeah, definitely, relationships are super important. I mean, in general in life, but from like a record label perspective, like maintaining those relationships and treating artists right and treating people right, like I think it goes a long way, where it results in basically people just wanting to help each other. And I think that's where the label has always been. It's kind of like the foundation of it.
Yeah, I had this weird thing when I first started the podcast where I didn't want to cheat by using connections to get to people that I didn't really know that well. So I was always of the mind where I'm like, okay, I want these people to come on the podcast for me, not because I'm friends with their friend. But I don't know how, but I guess just like over time, I just kind of got over it and realized that I can't really avoid that, especially when like this community is so small. It's going to get to the point where we're all just going to be friends or enemies anyways. And I just got over that. And it obviously made things like really easy, because there are people that I really wanted to talk to that I didn't know. And sometimes I would reach out and get no response, because I would get lost in like the sea of DMs, or I didn't have a way to contact them because I didn't know who was in the band, because there's those bands that are like mysterious and they don't advertise who's in the band, which I totally get. Yeah. So when I started to have to start hitting up my friends, I'm like, this is something that I can't avoid. and I don't even know why I was against it in the first place, anyways. So it was like this weird thing that I had in the very beginning, but I definitely don't think like that anymore. If I want somebody on and I don't know them, I'll kind of have to, hit up my contacts and be like, hey, who knows someone from this camp? Like, put me in contact.
Yeah.
I need to figure this out.
Yeah, for sure. And props to you for even like reaching out to, I mean, to me, for one, but also like just reaching out in general to people. I know that's kind of a hard thing to do if you don't even know, the band or know anyone in there. Like, I know that's kind of a vulnerable thing to do, as just like a person, like going up to someone and saying hi, for example. Like, for myself, I find that super difficult, and kind of because I'm more of like a shy person.
Oh, really? Okay.
But yeah, like, yeah, props to you for doing all that.
Yeah, I'm like the complete opposite. Like, I have no issue talking to people in person, especially if it's like a stranger. I'll go up and introduce myself, and I get that it can be weird. Even like these days, you kind of realize that it's like a lot of people are like socially awkward because they're so used to being on their phones and talking behind a screen. So when you go up and try to have like a real face-to-face interaction, it's just not like, it just doesn't feel as common as it should.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree. I find myself more, I guess, more shy now. I've always been kind of like shy, but early on, like when I was in high school, for example, going to those local shows, like I would just like go up to people and talk and go up to bands and be more conversational. Whereas now I find myself a little bit more reserved, and it's something I'm trying to be a little bit better about, for sure.
Yeah, I try to be just polite. Like, if there's somebody who I see in person that I don't know, or somebody who I've been wanting to like meet, I'll go and try to find like a nice normal way to go have an introduction. But there's times where like, I'm not perfect. I've like thought it was the right time, and I'm like interrupting their conversations and sounding like a fucking weirdo. But you got to go and just just put it yourself out there, and I feel like worst case you'll just have a funny story to tell if it doesn't go right.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay, but going back to that question, for the St. Louis bands, how did you build that relationship? Did you just happen to come across their music online and enjoyed it, and then you reached out, or were you tipped off, or like how did all that start?
Yeah, another good question. So initially started off with just friends, and then I realized that at the time, like I wasn't like super into like everything else that was coming out of my local scene, so I kind of had to start branching out. Like a lot of my friends' bands had kind of started to slow down at that point, and then I felt disconnected because I was away, at college, away from my hometown, so I wasn't going to local shows as much anymore. So yeah, a lot of it was me kind of branching out and finding new bands online. One of the things I used to do a lot in high school, this is like early 2010s, is go like Bandcamp, Tumblr, and Sophie's Floorboard were like my three main go-to websites where I was like constantly just finding so much new music. And then once I finished high school and went to college, the early stages, I stopped doing that. And then I found myself doing that again because I was like, well, now I need to like find new bands, if I want to keep the label growing. So I started like just digging through Bandcamp and New Lives. I found them just kind of going through, I think I was probably going to like the post-hardcore, tag or whatever tags it may have been, and I came across them and really liked their EP. I reached out to them just through email, and they said yeah, and kept it going from there. That's kind of how a lot of the early stages of the label was, friends or just like reaching out directly if I came across their Bandcamp.
Okay, for sure. Yeah, you got to kind of put in that groundwork to get out there and try to get people to join the roster. And I'm sure over time, with the success of the label, people became aware of what was going on, and I'm sure there was a point where bands started approaching you. Is it normal for you to get like weird, like I say weird, but like those like press packages where they're like trying to sell the band, which is fair. Like you got to do what you got to do.
Yeah, I definitely get a lot of submissions now. Not like hundreds every day or anything like that, but like probably like a few a month. And I'm appreciative of it. I mean, it's cool that bands want to work with the label. That's something like I wish that I had in those early stages. I was like, I wish like bands would like just come up to me and I could say, yeah, let's do it. But now I have to be a lot more selective about the work that I'm taking on. Just mainly because I work a 9 to 5 like most people, and the label is definitely a passion project, so I kind of have to work after hours and I have to be aware of the time commitment that I'm putting into everything.
Oh, okay. And you briefly mentioned Tumblr, which I just talked about on an episode of a podcast, and it made me curious because I hadn't logged into my Tumblr in like a long time, and I spent like probably like an hour the other day just scrolling through all my posts.
Yeah.
And it was so weird because the scene was so into Tumblr, right? There was like bands that I still see to this day, like bands that I've gone and seen live like recently that used to post stuff on Tumblr. Like they would post their tour dates, like their new music videos and stuff. And fast forward to now, like I don't know anybody like personally that still uses that for anything.
No. Yeah. I definitely don't use it anymore. Like I probably stopped using it like in high school, but well, actually when the record label started, I didn't know how to start a website, so I put it on Tumblr actually. Mm-hmm. Like those were I used that as like the first news post because that's like all I knew. And but yeah, I mean there is like a lot of publications that would just use Tumblr, like Property of Zach. I remember that's where I would follow them for like all the tour dates, like you're saying. There, I mean, at the time, like Title Fight and Daylight and Balance and Tiger's Jaw and stuff, like those were like the bands that were really popular at the time, and you would see like photos of them, just like live shows, and people were just posting like Bandcamp links and stuff. So that was kind of fun to experience at the time. It's kind of dead now, but yeah. Yeah,
like I used to post like looking back now because I was like way younger, so it's not that I didn't have a filter or whatever, but I just would I was so emotional like when I was younger, which is so weird. I used to care.
Everyone was on that website.
Yeah. I used to care so much about like falling in love, and I'm just like, who the fuck was, because like, and it was weird too because like I was still into the same shit that I'm into now, but somehow I had time to write about my feelings, which I was like, I don't know why I was so open about it. But I feel like I'm going in the reverse, right? Because social media, people are so forward with their personal life, and I get it, because back then when Twitter first started, that was the thing, was to post what you're doing at that exact moment. It wasn't like this crazy thing that is today. But I feel like since I was there in the early days, I kind of got that out of my system, and now I'm like kind of reverting back to, okay, I actually like having a little bit of privacy. I don't like these like I don't like the whole world knowing everything about me. So so it's really interesting to look back at like these older posts and just kind of like laugh, like holy shit, because like I would not post anything like that like today, and then like it's not like it said anything like crazy, but it was just like writing about the girl that I liked or was having trouble with, like, and putting their name out there, and just like letting my whole like friends list be in my relationship. It's so crazy. I was just pretty interesting back then, like when I look back at those posts.
Yeah, for sure. And I think it's maybe just like a part of growing up, or like I mean, like I relate to what you're saying for sure. Like definitely got like a little bit reversed and like just stopped posting as much, for example. But like I mentioned, I think it's just growing up, like you don't have that much time to like, spend usually like online and just like
Hmm.
posting a bunch of stuff if you're like working or, can't be on your phone at work, for example. Um, but yeah, I think it's I've made the conscious decision too, like not to post like super often either. Because I like you mentioned, I kind of like that privacy and just like being with people in real life. It's a lot cooler, I think. Like just like being able to talk to your friends in person, like that's cool. And it's something that we got taken away from us for, a year where you couldn't really see any of your friends often.
It was those were definitely some strange times because uh, like I get like how it was in those times, and for the friends that didn't want to come around, I totally understood, right? Like I never was upset or hated anybody for them not wanting to go outside, but just by chance, like me and my buddy Nate, my buddy Johnny, my buddy Garrett, and this other guy, we just hung out still, but it was just us, right? Like
Yeah, yeah.
we just kind of had this weird bubble, and one of our friends, Johnny, to this day has not gotten COVID. He's a madman. He never stopped partying, and I hope he doesn't get mad that I'm saying this on air. But he was going to like these mansion parties, rooftop parties, like doing crazy shit, but never got sick.
Wow.
And I know I got COVID, and the other three guys did. I think I might have been the only one out of the whole group to get it, and but we just kind of stuck in this bubble. So it was just us for so
Yeah.
long, and I always wondered, like, like where is everybody else? I hope everybody else is okay. And it was times where I even forgot about some people, right? Because I'm not like super close with everybody. But when things started opening back up and shows started happening, and I remember like rolling up to some of those early shows and seeing people that I hadn't seen in so long, I'm like, holy shit, I forgot you existed. And this is really strange. And I just got to see like so many people that, I care about, but it's just like you can't be best friends with everybody. So
Yeah.
I was just happy to see certain people after all of it, because it just was just like this weird relief. I'm like, dude, you like made it through. Like I'm like, you're here, you're
Yeah.
you're healthy. Like it's good to see you. So it definitely was an interesting time, and I definitely like it definitely changed my perspective on just getting out and trying to enjoy life
Yeah.
more. Because like
Yeah.
once things were like way more open than they used to be, I've been traveling like way more than I ever have in my entire life to go to shows, to see friends. So, and it's been good too, because I've been able to grow these relationships with people from other states. And just by seeing them, just a little more frequent than I used to, which is very interesting. And honestly, like I get it. Like they're probably stoked that I flew across the country to hang out, because that takes a lot, right?
Yeah.
But it is cool to just to have been able to see so many people that I care about that I don't normally get to see on a daily basis
Yeah.
more frequently than I have in my entire life, just because I've kind of been like, all right, like let's just get out there. Let's not really question too much. Let's be responsible about it, but let's get out there and just do more instead of trying to find an excuse not to go.
Yeah. No, yeah, that's a good way to look at it now. And I think I've had a similar experience where before I would just like find excuses to like not go out, like you're saying, like I just want to be home, like I just worked, I just want to relax and just be a homebody. And that is like out the window now. Like I just like want to get out and like go on walks, go outside, do stuff with my partner, and just like go to coffee shops and just like little things like that. And also like been going to a lot of shows now too, like pushing myself to like just go. Whereas before I would make excuses like, oh, I have work in the morning, for example.
Mm-hmm.
But sometimes just push through, and just like you end up usually having a good time. Hopefully having a good time with seeing bands that you like.
Yeah, I used to be like against going out, especially on like a weeknight when I have work the next morning.
Yeah.
But I'm like, all right, like let's just make a little sacrifice because seeing my friends in town, who are from like other states, is going to be worth it just for that short amount of time. Because who knows
Yeah.
when I'll get to see them again, and you can't really take those moments for granted. So I've like my new thing is like even if I have work the next day, I'll just try to stay as long as I can,
Yeah.
and then go home. Maybe I'll have to cut out early, but at least I paid. At least I got to see my friends and
Yeah. Yeah.
see some other local friends, and then just go home instead of just kind of throwing it all away and then having them wonder like, oh, like why didn't you come out? Like where were you? Because those are the worst texts,
Yeah.
right? When the venue's like literally 10 minutes down the road from where I live, and I got my friends from the other side of the country texting me like, where were you?
Yeah.
So
Yeah, that's tough. Like, yeah, I been trying to like go definitely more, and yeah, like you said, like being able to see like the locals or just seeing like the bands and making that time. I'm sure like it's good. I think it's good to just like connect with people, but also like obviously you're supporting like artists that are traveling. That's like not a hard thing to do. I mean, that is a hard thing to do.
mhm.
Sorry. And being able to make that little sacrifice, like usually like when I'm coming back home from it, I'm like, oh, like it's fine. Like I'm gonna wake up in the morning. What else would I have been doing at home besides watching TV? Like, did I really need like the 3 hours of TV that I spend?
100%. Yeah. And I just find I regret it when I'm waking up and pounding a Red Bull. I'm like, damn, I didn't get enough sleep. Was it really
Yeah.
like, was it really worth it? Because in the moment it felt so fun, but I feel
Yeah.
like shit right now.
Yeah.
No, I get it. But how is the Texas scene, right? Because I've been a fan of Texas for a really long time. Like even going like back in the day, there was bands like X Tripwire X from Corpus Christi. Not sure if you're familiar with them.
No, I don't think so. Yeah.
I have a shirt back here that I wear from time to time, and there's this band called Flawless Victory. I'm not sure where they're from exactly. And then other bands like Sudden Death, Will to Live, and then even getting into like the newer generation, there's bands like Ivy League, which I think is like one of the best bands that
Yeah.
I wish they would do more, but I get it. But
Yeah.
I will always like listen to that band and just think like, wow, this is such a gem. And like luckily I was able to see them a couple times, so like
Yeah.
would have been more sad if I never got to see them. But I just like whenever I talk about Texas and music, like that's like one band that I always have to bring up. But then there's like there was like a time when there was like a bunch of bands from like Austin going on, and I don't even know what happened to everyone out there. But then there's like obviously like more like newer stuff too, like that was it Ballista, like they're out there doing stuff, which is
Yeah.
pretty cool. I know they have like a crazy fan base, but I'm just curious from like your perspective, and I know Texas is a big state, so there's definitely like a lot of ground to cover. But
Yeah.
for you, like how do you view it, and is it viable for you to travel to each different part of Texas to get to shows, or do you just kind of favor like your immediate area since it's such a big state?
Yeah. Good points, and I appreciate you realizing the travel time in Texas to get to a show. I mean, I feel like you can relate because you're in California, right? So yeah, driving those few hours definitely takes a toll. Because it's not only two, but it's a back, and it can equal like 6 hours of your day. But yes, some of the early bands that you mentioned, I think that was like a little bit before when I was going to shows. I'm aware of like Will to Live because I'm in Houston now, and my friends talk about them. They have a new band that I saw actually. I didn't know they're in Will to Live, but my friends like let me know. I'm blanking on the name right now. I want to say Liberty and Justice, but I think that's their other band. But yeah, there's like there's some like cool bands coming up right now that I'm excited about. So in Houston specifically, there's this band called Strange Joy that I recommend people checking out. They're friends that I just like met through shows, and they're cool if you like I'm trying to think of how to describe them. Early on, they sounded like more like Drug Church, but they've kind of like formed their own sound now. I would say they're a little bit more, a little bit harder in sound now. In San Antonio, Future Shock is really cool.
Oh, Future Shock.
I'm not sure if you heard them.
I have a buddy.
Okay, yeah.
I don't want to say who it is because I don't know if you'd want me to say this
Yeah.
publicly, but I have a buddy who's in a pretty popular band. He reached out to me. He was like, "Yo, I just saw this band, Future Shock. I want to sign them to our label." And I'm like, "Oh, okay, let me check him out." And I checked him out because of my buddy telling me about that.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure if he ever signed them or wants to sign them, but they're fucking awesome.
Yeah, they're sick. Shout out Future Shock. They're like, I think they're like a little bit younger kids too in San Antonio. I haven't gotten the chance to see them yet, just because I think they've mainly been playing San Antonio and just haven't gone to a show there. But I am going to be moving back to San Antonio soon, so I'm excited to see that band for sure. So Corruption is a new record label from San Antonio too, and I love that they're doing what they're doing. Strange Joy and Future Shock are like two of the. Oh, I don't think Future Shock, but Strange Joy is a band on Corruption that they're going to be releasing. So I'm excited for that. And they started as Inside Knowledge fanzine, I believe was the name of it. And they're just kids who like hardcore and put out zines and then started the record label. So I think that's really cool because I don't see that very often from San Antonio, especially. And then like Belisa, like you mentioned, I did see them as well at that same show with the Will to Live second band. They opened up, both of them opened up for Madball, so that was really cool. I'm trying to think of like other bands off the top of my head. I'm blanking right now, but yeah, I mean, whenever I go to shows and I see like the openers, like they're, I like what I hear, and it gets me excited for local bands in Texas again, because I feel like it kind of like was a little bit quiet like these past recent years, but it was like really popping, like and like you mentioned, like during like Ivy League and then post Ivy League too, there was like a renaissance of Texas hardcore that unfortunately I missed out on because I was at college and could not get to a lot of those shows. But like looking back and listening to like those records now, there's like a lot of great stuff. Like you mentioned, like the Austin scene too. I think that's where a lot of it was happening. But yeah, I think it's coming up, and I'm looking forward to hearing like young new bands again. And there's a lot of cool stuff happening for sure. Shout out Ivy League too. I wanted to mention that. I have their so Lucky House. This Josh, the singer, started a screen printing shop with his partner Joe. They're up in like the Boston area now, and all of the Sunday Drive merch goes to them.
Oh wow! Yes. Okay, yeah. That's so sick. I love that connection.
Yeah, so Ivy League played our first showcase. This was in 2016 in San Antonio, and they weren't on the label or anything, but I just hit them up because Philip Odom. He's like an engineer. He recorded Frontage, which is the first Sunday Drive release. So I was in the studio with them and kind of was just like friendly with them. He ended up joining Ivy League at that time, so I had like just like a connection I could reach out to see if they would play. They said yeah, and it was sick. They played like close to 1 a.m. because the show like was just running late like usual. But it was like a really cool time. And then they also played our next showcase in 2017 in Austin. So I got to experience some of like the most recent shows, and yeah, they're still really great. Their newest LP came out like in 2018 or 2019. I feel like it's slept on. Definitely check it out if you haven't listened to that.
100%. And I've been trying to get them to come on the podcast for a really long time.
Yeah.
Especially when they moved out there and started that business. I thought it was such a cool thing for them to be able to do that and get a cool spot when they first moved out there and have success and get a lot of support. and I just am so curious. I want to talk Ivy League. So I've been asking for years, and it's like I haven't gotten a no, so I feel like the door is still open. So maybe they'll hear this and be like, oh, maybe we should finally do that weird podcast that's been bugging us for years. Because I like I said, I'm a huge Ivy League fan, and for people listening who are probably like screaming and pounding at their keyboards, I can't talk about Texas and not mention like bands like Power Trip, Bitter End, Judiciary. I have friends in this newer band.
Absolutely.
Have friends in this newer band. I'm not sure what they're up to these days. I know they had some like member switches. This band called Tiger Splitter. So I hope they're out there doing well. But yeah, Texas is just like such a big state, and I'm so happy that there's always like cool shit going on everywhere, because it just kind of reminds me of like a big state like California or even something like Florida. There's just cool shit going on everywhere. It's not really just concentrated in like one spot.
Yeah, for sure. I didn't mention the bands that you mentioned too, because I feel like they're just a given now. Like they're so important
true
to this scene. Like I feel like people just know. But yeah, it's definitely props to those bands.
For sure. I know, but I'm trying to get a message. Why didn't you bring up Bitter End? Did you forget about Bitter End? It's like, no, I have a Bitter End Climate of Fear gradient tee back here that I will not wear because I don't know where I could get another one right now. So I'm trying to like preserve that because I like that shirt so much.
Yeah, I think I saw that they're like opening up some shows too.
They're playing the record release for my friend's band in Atlanta. Shout out Strangle You. And I'm puzzled because I don't even know how my friend Cayman, shout out Cayman, I don't even know what the connection is to him and this awesome band from Texas that doesn't really do much, but I'm stoked for them. Like it's cool for them to be able to get Bitter End to come out and play a show, because that just seems really rare these days.
Yeah, that sounds cool. I think I listened to the episode that you mentioned those shows on that are coming up. So yeah, shout out to that scene right now. It seems really cool.
Okay, and you are working with this band from Florida, which I was like very surprised about, just because I had just found out about them, just because I'm friends with Josh, who plays in the band The Arrival Note, and I remember speaking with him, and he was telling me about new music, and it's coming out on Sunday Drive. I'm like, how are you already like working with this band when they hadn't even like really put anything out? They're not really even popping yet. So I'm just curious, like how did you come to meet Josh and the guys from The Arrival Note and start that relationship?
So Paul from Fake Eyes actually sent me the demo before like they had announced anything, or they even announced that they were a band. So I didn't know who they were. Paul just had told me that they played like in Josh played like in Point of Contact and some other bands. So I was like, okay, I mean, if they played like in those bands, I'm sure like this must be really good. And if Paul is sending it, because we both like relate on like emo music specifically, and I'm a fan of like Paul's music and like the zine that he did, so I was like, if he's sending this, like I know it's gonna be good. So I put it on, and this is kind of a fun story. I was on the way back home from the theater, so I just saw a movie with my partner, and it was like a Friday night, and this is like probably like 9 p.m. in Texas Friday night. And I got this Dropbox link on Instagram, and I plugged in my phone and I listened to it. And I was like, I turned to my partner, Jackie. I was like, this is good. And yeah, so I mean, that's pretty much it. Like I responded to Paul, got into contact with Josh, and we chatted on FaceTime, just talking about the EP and stuff. And yeah, they're amazing emo band. Feel like that style of emo hasn't been popular for a while, and it's kind of nice to see it coming back now.
100%. It's cool to kind of live through like the heyday of emo, right? Because when I was younger, I was listening to obviously like hardcore, but at the same time I was listening to like a lot of Drive Through Records, Victory Records, and even like Fueled by Ramen. I think that label was so sick. They had so many good bands on that label.
Yeah.
And to have it go away, because I don't know, like I grew up, and just like the whole new wave of that kind of music, just I was like, I don't even know how I enjoyed it in the first place. It just like kind of turned me like really sour on it. So I just would just go back to my favorites. Like to this day, I still listen to The Starting Line, Taking Back Sunday, pretty frequently.
Yeah.
And I would still like kind of like, look around like, every once in a while to try to find like a good band from like that genre. But it just like not a lot of it was like clicking with me. And I was like, okay, maybe I just grew out of it. But then as I'm getting older and, just by chance, these like hardcore kids, I say kids, but they're older, but these hardcore people are starting bands like The Arrival Note, and then even like some like shoegazy stuff like like my friends in Soul Blind, or even like Koyo, right? Koyo is like taking the world by storm. Like that sound is like the sound they're doing is perfect. So just that kind of sounds like, wow, like it still interests me. It's just, I guess this whole time, the bands that have been coming out just haven't really been my thing. But with this whole new wave, and just by chance, all hardcore kids like taking like a real interest in that style and wanting to play that style just because they loved it just as much as I did growing up. It's really cool to see and be a part of like this new wave and getting to like kind of like experience what I did when I was younger again with these newer bands playing that type of music.
Yeah, absolutely. I am with you on that too. I early on was listening to like a lot of like drive-through bands. Starting Line was like huge for me as well. Taking Back Sunday, all of that, and then it kind of just faded away. And then these like newer bands started, but I think it leaned a little bit more into like the pop punk aspect. It's like the Wonder Years was like huge at the time, and and then like Knuckle Puck and Stories to Far, all of those bands kind of came into fruition. But it was different than like that earlier sound that we're discussing. And with these newer bands, I think the biggest aspect of it is because they come from hardcore and they have just like a little bit different, like, I guess, mindset or like song structure where like it gets like you and I, for example, like back into that sound. And like I ran a Movie Life shirt right now. Like they like when you mentioned Coil, like that was like the first like point of reference that I came in my head. I was like, oh wow, there's this like new Long Island band, like with the sound like in 2022. Like that's pretty amazing. Like, and it got me excited about all that music again. And so Koyo, like Private Mind, just put out a single recently. That band's great too. Sparing, who's on the label too, they kind of have like a similar sound. But yeah, there's like a new wave, I feel, and they're all like hardcore related people making the music, and it has this slightly aggressive leaning. But when you look back at the history of this music, it's kind of funny how they connect, because like the Movie Life, for example, hardcore, people came from the scene. Taking Back Sunday, same thing. Like they all had that connection, and I feel like that's what made the music just like connect with people like you and I, and just to have that connection back, or at least like maybe it's been there in like other bands, but it just hasn't like been highlighted until recently, and I really like where it's going now.
100%. Yeah, I am so happy to see the success for Koyo, and listening to their music early on, I was like, okay, this band, I think they have it. And sure enough, just pandemic kind of eased up, and they were able to hit the road, and they just kind of had not like overnight success, but I feel like they've just blown up a lot faster than a lot of bands these days, but it's well deserved, because I feel like everyone in that band is super talented and they know what they're doing, and I feel like they're doing it right.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and you can tell that they've been working hard at it for a moment. Like even before the 7-inch on Triple B, like they had already had like, I think an EP and like an acoustic EP like that they put on LDB, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, they've been going at it for a while, and their hard work is definitely paying off.
100%. I'm waiting for someone to start a new band that sounds like Mayday Parade because I love that band so much.
Yeah.
And I'm like fortunate to have been able to see them a couple times. And it's harder for me to go out and see a band like Mayday because I like love that band so much, but then they go out on the road with bands that I don't care for, or they play these like bigger festivals that I would not want to attend at all. I'd rather go do something else with my time. So it's just like I cherish the times that I have gotten to see them, and I'm hoping like, you know, somewhere down the line that like I can, you know, find time to see them again where things make sense, where they play with bands that I actually enjoy, and they're not at these like you know, festivals that I'm just not into.
Yeah, I definitely agree. There's a time and place, and when that time happens and I come to see them, not specifically Mayday Parade, but just like, you know, just like the older bands that we're fond of in our like teenage years, for example, like you can see a lot of them now, but like you mentioned, they are like on bigger tours and stuff, and it just doesn't connect the same. But yeah, I actually saw Mayday Parade on that Chain Fest. I think it was like last year. But I saw like them and like Jimmy Eat World and like Circa. It was like a bunch of bands, but I was really excited for that show because I love those bands. But like the show experience itself, it was just like different, and I didn't like love it because it was like a huge stage. It was like the people there. I just wasn't connecting with as much as like if you go see them, like, you know, like at a club show, for example. It seemed kind of like a nostalgia event versus just like a regular show that's happening. But I feel like if the environment was different, like for example, Jimmy Eat World ended up playing Chain Reaction like that week, which is insane. Like for a band that size to play that venue. And I wish I got a ticket and would have experienced that. But it sold out like instantly. And yeah, I feel like it has to be like an environment like that for like us to appreciate it now, because at those big festivals, I think it's just not the same.
Yeah, it's strange. I think back to, I can't remember what festival it was. I keep drawing a blank, but it was some festival that I was working at, and I was like, okay, I was like doing something with merch. I can't remember who it was for. I'm trying to think. I was either selling merch for, who was I selling merch for? I want to say it was, why can't I think of the band's name? Not the Postal Service. What was the other band? Why am I drawing a blank?
Death Cab?
Yeah. Okay. I was doing merch for Death Cab. I'm pretty sure this is the right fest. Wow. I was doing merch for Death Cab, and Citizen was playing this fest, but like Death Cab was on main stage. Citizen was playing in this airplane hangar, if I remember correctly. And I was like, all right, I'm gonna go see Citizen, but I was like, I'm not gonna, you know, go and stand with the you know, general public, because it was like this giant airplane hangar, and I'm like, there's no way that I want to be in a sea of people, you know, getting sweated on. So I was like, screw this. I was like, I'm gonna go out back. And I remember my buddy Andy was there, and he hates when I tell the story, but Andy was there, and I had to escort him backstage with me, and we were on stage watching Citizen, and I just remember looking out into this like sea of people, and I have pictures, so I'll send you pictures once we get off air, but I remember just like looking out into the sea of people, and I was just like, I would not enjoy this if I was out there getting smashed, and just there's just too many people. I was like, this is so this is insane. But obviously they're a huge band, and I was like lucky enough to have been able to see it from a cool, like, you know, vantage point. But yeah, I just feel like I've seen Citizen when they first came to California, at like a really small venue. So I kind of seen them at, like, in a bunch of different stages. And I just definitely obviously prefer the like way more like intimate stuff versus going to like this giant airplane hangar where it's just like, way too many people. It's not my favorite setting.
Yeah.
But as far as the label these days, I know I've been seeing, you know, just a bunch of different bands. Like we mentioned Squint earlier. Been seeing, you know, stuff about Glare. How is it these days for you to discover and sign new bands? Do you feel like you have like a certain process that you like to run these bands through, or is it just kind of if it feels right for you to sign these bands?
Yeah, for like newer artists coming on, like I mentioned earlier, like I just kind of have to think uh more thought involved into taking on a new artist at this point, just because of the time commitment. Um, but yeah, I've always had this, I guess, fundamental idea of like, if I'm not gonna listen to this in the car or like, when I'm out and about, like I shouldn't put it out because that means I probably don't really love it. So I'm trying to only put out stuff that I love since the beginning, that I really like want to be passionate about and not waste advanced time and, really connect with them. So yeah, that's kind of, those are like the main points that I've always operated Sunday Drive with. And I would say now, like discovering new artists, it's a lot easier because there are so many bands on the label at this point where friends of friends can like send over stuff directly to me. And usually if it's sent that way, I usually like it. So and it ends up working out. Or, we do get some submissions too. I try to listen to most of them. A lot of them I just have to pass on, but there are some, that come through. I'm like, oh, this is cool. And that'll happen. But yeah, with all like the recent bands, it I feel like most of the time it's just coming from like a friend or a friend of a friend.
Okay, hell yeah, that's cool. Because I feel like instead of like spending all your time having to go out and look for bands, now you're just kind of having to sift through whatever's like coming your way.
Yeah,
and I appreciate people who will reach out and be like, hey, I want to come on the podcast, or hey, here's my band, can you please listen to it? And I have to find like creative ways to say no sometimes.
yeah.
But I do get surprised because I've said it on here before, like I can't catch everything, so sometimes things will kind of get past me and I just will be late to the party. But there's this band in, I don't want to say who it is, but they're coming on the podcast soon. They reached out through email and I was just like, this band's probably gonna suck. But I always give people the benefit of the doubt. I'll take some time to actually
yeah,
give them a fair chance because I feel like that's the least I can do, right? Because that's all I ever wanted, was an opportunity when I was coming up. So that's like the least I can do for anyone who is wanting something out of me. So, and I'm not better than anybody. I'm just like everybody else. So I went to this band's band camp. I'm like, yeah, this band's gonna suck. And I was playing Apex with my buddy Nate. So I was like, Nate, I'm gonna go on mute and listen to this shitty band real quick. Be right back. And then I remember I listened to their new stuff. I'm like, oh, this is actually pretty good. And I listened to the older stuff. I'm like, okay. I was like, I think this band has something going. I was like, let me actually get back to this guy and not blow him off. So in the end, me thinking it was going to suck, I was surprised. So I always find the time to get back to people because when people message me, trying to show love or have like an inquiry about something, I always do my best to respond. So I never want to be that person where I get too busy or I think I'm too good to talk to anybody. So it's just like, if there are people out there listening who think that, they want an opportunity or something, yeah, reach out. I'll talk to you. I'll listen to your shit. I'll figure it out. And it might not be for me. It might not be what I'm into. Cause like when I have people on the podcast, I always tell people like, these are bands that I legitimately like and believe in. And I want to continue that trend going forward because I don't want people to tune in and be like, oh, he doesn't really like this band. Like he's just trying to sell us on some BS. No, like I want people to tune in and know that they can confidently listen and know that I actually like this or that I'm interested in that band or that person and that it's not just some weird like chill thing.
Yeah. No, yeah. It is like a lot of like a band to reach out, and I kind of put myself in those shoes again, like in the beginning, like the early stages. Like I know how hard it is to make those connections that you want to make but don't really know how or can yet because you don't have a lot of music out, for example. But yeah, I mean, these days, like I just can't like get back to everyone as much as I would like to. In the early stages, I was like, I'm gonna reply to every single email, but I think at this point it's just not realistic. But I will say that I do try to make an effort to listen to everything that comes through the email, at least like you mentioned, just to give them that bit of attention. And also a lot of the times you can like weed out the emails based on just like how they're introducing themselves, so you can kind of tell it's like a template that they're not really kind of speaking directly to you, but more so to like a bulk list of contacts.
Yeah, let me
yeah.
What's funny is that sometimes I fear that people think about that when I reach out, because yeah. Honestly, for anyone who's been asked, you've been asked, I don't have a script. It's just this is the most direct way for me to ask, and it's proven successful. So I'm all right, hey, this is how I ask people, and I don't copy and paste. I literally type it out on my phone, because like I do it all on my phone. Yeah. But sometimes I feel like when I'm in the time period where I'm booking the podcast, because normally I'll try to book everything like around the same time, and obviously like things will trickle in here and there, but I try to do like the bulk of booking the guests all at the same time. So it's like I'm sure people have chatted behind the scenes like, hey, is this like a script? Is this like a prompt? But it's like, no, this is just the way that I speak, because it's proven successful.
Yeah.
And then it's not obviously it's not like word for word exactly the same, but it's just like the same like generic question, because it's just like, hey, do you want to come on the podcast, yes or no? It's not like yeah. So I think sometimes that people could probably mistake me just like copy and pasting, but like no, like if you ever gotten asked to come on the podcast, it's me sitting on my phone, maybe my computer, and actually typing it out. There's no notes saved where I'm like, all right, let me go open my notes to send these out to people. No, it's all typed up by me, by these fat thumbs right here. You got it.
Yeah, for sure. I guess like I just appreciate like when someone, you can tell like someone's like being personable and like kind of ask, like putting more thought into like the writing to you. I think that's from my perspective, I think that's like a really cool and like nice thing to do when you're reaching out to someone. Mm-hmm. So I always appreciate those emails like that. When I'm talking about like the template ones, I'm talking about like, it'll be like, here's how many followers we have, like here's like a attached PDF, and like I don't care about that. Like I just want to hear like the music, Yeah.
It's like, I don't care about your followers. I just care if the music is good or not. That's what it kind of boils down to, right? Like that's like the most important thing.
For sure.
And I've been I've gotten some like press releases. I'm like, oh, I don't even know how sometimes people get my email. I'm like, how the hell did you get my email? Which I'm like, okay, I guess that's like, some initiative. I don't know where they got it from, because I'm pretty sure it's not posted anywhere. But I'll get these emails and I'm like, oh, they're actually giving me like a professional like email. I'm like, okay, cool. This is like I guess I've gotten to this point where like I've had some like management reach out and stuff, and I'm like, oh, this is cool, really professional. I never thought I'd be dealing with this with my podcast. Granted, we're it's pretty popular, but it was just surprising, right? Because this is something that I just started because I got lazy with Twitch. I still stream on Twitch, so shout out Twitch. I stream like every now and then, but I had this like vision of like going like full time, and I just got lazy because I went to, I'm not sure if you know how Twitch works, but like you can go, anybody could create a Twitch account, but then as you stream, you can you get to like the affiliate level where you can get like subscribers and stuff, but then like the next level is like partnership where you can make like like real money. And I was like, all right, cool. We're going to get to partnership and we're just going to be able to do that full time. And then I got to the affiliate, which I'm still an affiliate, which is kind of funny. And then I just got lazy. I was like, oh, cool. I got to this goal that I never thought I would get to. Let me just kind of sit on it. And then it just got to the point where like, I was like, I don't want to do this anymore, because back then I didn't have like my system wasn't as good as it is now. Like it was like, I had like a decent build. But then I had all this equipment, so I'm like, oh, whatever. So I just kind of sat around and I just had this equipment for like the longest time. And then I can't even remember what it was, but I just had this idea, like, let me start a podcast. And that's how this, like, oh, okay. No, actually, going back, I do remember for anyone who has been, and this is like the old version of the website, right? Because I just revamped the website. So like a lot of the older stuff is not lost in time. I still have like all of it. It's on a server somewhere.
Yeah.
But I was doing these interviews. Shout out to Taylor Young. He was my first ever like email interview, like the Eyes of the Lord EP. I don't even know what came over me that day, but I remember I was at work listening to the Eyes of the Lord EP that came out, and my buddy Andy was there. I was like, hey, I think I want to do this thing. Like, this EP is really good and I want to know more about it. So I just emailed him. He was like super into it, and then did like a couple interviews. I think I had maybe like 5 or 6. And then I think, that's how the idea for the podcast started. I was like, I wanted more in-depth answers, but I didn't want to email them back. So I was like, oh, well, like, what better way than just to talk to them?
Yeah.
But it took me 20 episodes to get a guest on because, I wasn't sure what I was trying to exactly do, because I was, like I said, I was telling those stories, and then had the first guest on, and it became a thing. I was like, oh, people actually gave good feedback. So I was like, okay, maybe this is something that people would be interested in. And that's how it kind of formed. So my dusty Twitch equipment, like I didn't start off with this mic. Obviously, this is for people who know, this is my second mic. Because my first mic, I had a Audio Technica AT 2020, and then I upgraded when I decided to take it serious.
Yeah. You mentioned you mentioned the blog. I was gonna say I feel like I was Googling a band and your like website came up on that Google search, and I tried to click it, and then I went to like a 404, 'cause like you mentioned, like you updated the website, so I don't think it's there anymore. I'm trying to remember what band it was, but I don't know. But I think I was just like, whenever like we sign like a new band, I have to do like a like kind of like a press release for them, like not only to like send out to context, but also to have like just like a brief on our website. And so if they play like another bands, like I'll research the other bands, just like, put everything into context and try to build like the best draft that I can, like with the band. But yeah, I think that's what I was doing. I was just doing research, and one of the bands that you wrote about came up.
That's awesome. It's weird too, because like for me, I put it up, but then I move on because I got other shit going on, and I put it out there, and I hope people like enjoy it, and then I hope that they enjoy the next thing, right? I don't think that people are going back. And it's so weird because I get so surprised at how people consume what I do. It's like, because in my mind, I think people are like doing it the way that I am, right? Like, like, all right, here's the new episode. Let's put it on at work, put it on the drive. Okay, cool. That episode's done. When's the next one? But I got like, people are finding out about it, like, however they do. And I have people just listening to like the most random episodes, not like random, but in my mind it's random, because I'm like, that came out like 2 years ago, but people are still blowing this episode up. That's crazy. And it's just very interesting to me, because I never thought that it would be like that. Just but I get it, right? Because with the amount of people that I've had on, and the type of like variety that's there, and obviously like I said, like everybody that I have on, I have a genuine interest in or enjoy the bands. So it's cool to see people listening to something that I put out years ago, and hoping that, okay, cool, if they like that, there's we got 2 more years of that shit like ready to go for them to discover. So I think it's just very interesting that people just come across your stuff in the most random way.
Yeah, absolutely. I think having that like a back catalog of things that you've done in the past is like important, because those entry points to discovering whatever you do can lead to people ended up supporting like over and over, like on new releases from my perspective for the label. So that's something I try to like focus on. For example, we still only have like a DIY like artist Bandcamp account. So all of the releases were like just on the Sunday Drive page, and there would be like duplicates on like their like own Bandcamp.
Mhm.
So I ended up putting like the monthly like fee to have a label Bandcamp page. That way it kind of links everyone together.
Okay, that's
And I
nice.
thought that was like I I always like wanted to do it, but I couldn't afford it. Like it's like $50 a month or something insane.
Mhm.
And so once the label got to the point where it can afford it, I made sure to do that because cross discovery is super important, I feel like, with music. And if you're on Bandcamp and you're like this one band, there's now like a badge at the top that it says like back to Sunday Drive Records. And that will like lead you to like find more bands. And so that's something I implemented to like help like not only one artist on, you know, the label, but like all of the artists. Like we're all in this together and helping each other.
100%. No, I like that. You want to kind of have like a home base
Yeah.
for everyone, and there's going to be those people who are like, okay, cool, I'm into this band. They're on this label. Like, what else do they have to offer? So it's cool to be able to just kind of have it consolidated, because there's times, yeah, where I go, I'm like, wait, do I go to the label or the
Yeah.
the actual Bandcamp? Or then it's like, wait, why do I go to the band's page? They only have the debut single. I have to go to the label because they have the full album. But then I always
Yeah.
feel like when bands are on the labels like Bandcamp page, I feel like it gets a little lazy. There's no lyrics. There's less information.
Oh yeah, yeah.
And I'm just
Yeah.
like, why? I'm like, I don't know. I feel like for me, it just always seemed like when you're on the actual band's page, there's just a little more care for it. They like to
Yeah.
provide like more information, which I get, but it's like, dude, if
agree.
you're the label, you should have somebody that's their thing. Okay, cool. Like somebody had to put it
Yeah.
on the record label's Bandcamp page anyways. What's it like to go add the lyrics, to go add the band members, or just the extra like production notes that, you know, people like me like to check
Yeah.
out, you know?
No, yeah, I totally agree. And that's one of the points that like I ended up making that record label Bandcamp, because when you listen to an album, you're listening to it on the band's page. So it feels more I feel like it feels more personal because you're like listening directly on their page and you feel like you're supporting them directly and you're having that experience, if you will, just like on their Bandcamp page versus like on the Sunday Drive one. And I try to make sure that we get all those liner notes in, like lyrics. Like I like to read along, you know, lyrics as well, and put like production credits. I think credits are super important because you're able to highlight people who are doing a lot of the work that usually aren't highlighted. Like engineers, for example, you know, people who mix and master, people who do album art, like they're like play a huge part in the music. And a lot of the times I feel like they're maybe like in the shadows, whereas the band is like, you know, on the forefront. But I think those individuals definitely deserve the recognition.
100%, yeah, because like I'm not gonna lie, when I find out that a record was like recorded, or if my buddy like from like Philly, my buddy like Wyatt Olberhoser, if he had a hand in it, or someone like Charles Toshio, if he
Yeah.
had a hand in it, or someone like Andy Nelson, just any of these like key people
Yeah.
who worked on a lot of records that I love, if I know that they worked on this new record of a band that I don't even know about, I'm gonna be a little more invested in it, wanting to know what it's about, because obviously if someone as talented as those people wanted to work with them, or even agree to work with them, that there has to be some sort of like talent there. So I think that stuff is important, and even when it comes to artwork too, because it's just like, if I love this artwork from a band, I want to know like who it came from, and I might like their other stuff, or maybe there's like some sort of interesting history there, like I want to be able to ask about it and figure out who it is and why they did it.
Yeah, and that, again, going back to the point, like that's the importance of a catalog. Like if you like, one engineer, for example, like you mentioned, you're gonna go check out the other stuff. If you like one podcast, you're gonna go listen to, the bands that are on the podcast, for example, the other bands on the record label, the other bands that that designer had a hand in, So yeah, I think it's super important to just kind of support each other in this creative, space that we're in. Because there's not like a lot of people doing it, and a lot of the individuals, it's hard to like make a name of yourself. Like you mentioned, like Wyatt, I think he mixed the All Under Heaven release that we did, and now every time like his name comes up, like I make sure to listen to it because it sounds really good.
Hmm.
So yeah, I definitely agree with what you're saying.
Yeah, and shout out New Jersey.
Yes.
All Under Heaven, awesome band. I actually ran into some of those guys in Philly when I was at the From Within Records showcase. I was like, "Yo,
Yeah.
obviously those are friends of mine," and I'm like, "We got to do a podcast to talk about All Under Heaven," and they're like super into it. So that's going to be coming at some point.
Yeah. Yeah. Shout out Shackled.
100%, DSA 100%. One thing that I always get concerned about when it comes to labels, like when I look at Sunday Drive, like and you might not even think about this, but for me, I see that you have this ear for music, right? For you to be able to have kind of gotten a lot of these good bands early on before like any of the bigger labels. I'm always curious, like, okay, there has to be a point where you have to make this decision. Are you going to be like this stepping stone to get to the bigger labels, or are you trying to like solidify the label and kind of grow into be one of those contenders? So I'm just curious for you, is that like a concern of yours, or are you just kind of like in your own lane, just kind of just going with the flow right now?
Yeah, that's a great question. All of these years I've just been going with the flow because I never expected the label to get to the size it's at now. I was just doing it passionately because I really wanted to do it. But I'm at that point now of what you're talking about, where like there's this fork in the road and you don't really know what to do next.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm figuring it out right now. I'm in the process of it. And because like the stepping stone thing, like you mentioned, like it's a part of starting a label. I think you end up, ultimately I want every one of our artists like to do the best that they can, and if that means going on to a huge label, like I think that's great. But you end up like, you're losing like a huge band on your label, for example. And it's not to like think of it as like a monopolizing bands on like one label or anything. It's just like wanting to support them at a higher level than what you have been. So yeah, I am getting the help that I need to right now in order to make that happen, and I'm excited for like that future opportunities to come. But yeah, I think it's in the works right now. It's in progress where I can help bands more to the ability that I would like to.
Okay, because I got some news that one of your bands, is going to a bigger label. Obviously, it's not my place to break the news, but when I got that information, and I just wasn't happy. I was just like, man, why did you go there, of all places? And I was just, like not like upset, but I was just hoping that they would go in a different direction. But obviously, they have to do what they feel is right for themselves, which I can totally respect. But I just kind of look at them and I'm like, dude, you guys have it where you didn't even need to go to where they're headed to have success. I feel like they could have just been successful staying on the label or even going somewhere else or even starting their own thing. But obviously, they felt like they needed to go to another label. But it just kind of just like makes me wonder, like, okay, if they were just to stick around, and I feel like the label and the band could grow together and to create something new, right? Because I feel like sometimes bands will all flock to what's hype and cool, and they think that's success. When I guess in some ways it is, but I feel like the fact that other labels like Sunday Drive, Numerality, Zine, LDB, From Within, Streets of Hate, just like the fact that there's so many labels can exist at one time, I feel like is the best example that you don't have to go where everyone's headed to kind of have that quote unquote success. I just wish people would, I guess, just be more loyal, if that makes sense.
No, yeah. No, I hear you, and I feel like that there's definitely like an emotional aspect in relationships in general, and
Mm-hmm.
and then once you get into like the music space, you kind of have to like, or at least with myself, like I try like to disconnect, a little bit, because I realize that it's not my band, like it's not my music, like I don't have no right over the decisions that you're making and stuff. so when situations like this happen, I try to just like help the band as much as I can. That was my goal in the beginning. That's going to be my goal to the end. And if that happens where they move, any band like moves on to another label, like I wish them the best, and I want to help them, even post leaving the label. Like it's still going to be friendly with them. I want the best things for them. So yeah, I mean, and then but that it makes you kind of like think though, like what can we do as a label to provide those opportunities that the bands are needing now, because they got to that, any bands getting to that point of like, okay, what do we do now?
Mhm.
Like I want to be there to support and help more. And I think I'm getting to that place now. And the whole thing's a learning process. Like I didn't know anything when I started, but now I'm like, I have to give a shout out to Death Wish, because they've been a huge help. They're a distributor, and the relationships that I've made with them has been super helpful, and I've learned a lot from Rich, and Keith has been helping. I just like met Trey, which is like kind of crazy for me because the co-founder of Death Wish, huge important label to us. So yeah, they've been like helping me, and I think we're gonna have like a lot of cool opportunities in the future.
And I want to say shout out Keith. I got to meet Keith when I was in Philly for that From Within Record Showcase, and
Oh, nice.
yeah, Keith is awesome. He's been on the podcast before, so it was just very cool to finally meet him in person.
Yeah. I think I'm gonna meet him soon, hopefully in the summer. So yeah, I'm looking forward to that.
Well, you got to tighten up those contracts so these bands can't just dip out. No, I'm just kidding. I'm kidding. Everybody, there's nothing crazy like that going on.
No, a lot of the bands are still like handshake deals. There is like we have like an agreement form, I call it, but it doesn't bind the band to the label for X amount of releases or anything. The main reason I just put things on paper just to be transparent, and hey, we're pressing 100 records. Like this is how much it's gonna cost. This is how much I'm making. This is how much you're making. Just to like have it on paper like that way. There's no like harsh feelings for some reason that would come about, or like, hey, you didn't pay me, for example. Like I try to keep everything recorded, so everyone's just like happy and can like just have a good relationship.
100%. Yeah, I feel like that's just the most important thing, right? You got to be able to have that trust, and that goes a long way. So if you guys are able to trust each other,
Yeah.
that's very important. That's cool. I'm happy to hear that you're working towards being able to provide more opportunities for the bands on the label, and to see things grow. Because like I said, for me being on the outside and listening to the bands that you put out, it's been definitely a cool thing to support, and fun to watch the label grow, and to see even some of my friends get on the label.
Yeah. No, that's always cool. Like when you meet people and like it's their friends that are joining the label, like that's super cool. And yeah, I appreciate like everyone who has like checked out even one release. Like I know that's even hard to do like these days, like to be able to put on a record that you don't know on Apple or Spotify or Bandcamp or whatever it may be. So yeah, I definitely appreciate it.
Okay, and wanted to ask you about these Sunday conversations that you post from time to time. What inspired you to start doing those?
Yeah, so shows like yours, and like I like Axe to Grind, and like 100 Words or Less. Like I've been listening to like a bunch of podcasts for like since like college, I think, and I've always valued these conversations that you hear directly from musicians, because you were mentioning like earlier, like the blog aspect, the zine aspect. You only get like so much from it because it's just it's words on paper, and it's like a good story. But to be able to like hear and now like visually see people that you admire or you like their art, I think is like really important. And so a lot of the bands on the label, sometimes they don't get the opportunities to go on like bigger shows like that. So I was like, why not just make our own? Like we have our label, like we're here supporting each other. Like I'll just do it. So yeah, that was a kind of like the main influence for that. And also just to be more personable. Before I was kind of like in the shadows, I felt like, which is another thing I struggled with running the label. Because like I mentioned, I am like shy, and especially like putting myself out on like social media was like a little bit more difficult for me. But I kind of just got over that, and I value just like people, and like when artists like put themselves out there. Like I have to give a shout out to Joey's World. Like I think he did like an update video randomly, and I saw it and I was like, this is cool. Like he's talking to the people who follow him, who support his art, and he's talking about what he's doing. And I wanted to do that. So I was able to with a lot of the bands. So it's been a fun thing.
For sure. And I'm happy that you mentioned 100 words or less. There was an episode that they did with Jay Pepito from Reign Supreme, and I think that's just like one of my favorite episodes that they ever did. So for anyone who hasn't had a chance to listen to that, if you are a fan of Reign Supreme or were a fan, I highly suggest you go listen to that episode. It's really awesome. But I do like that you do that or do those conversations, because it's just a cool outlet, right? Because I feel like that's just another branch for people to kind of latch onto when it comes to the label, because I feel like to have more avenues for people to get involved and to kind of get attached, I only see that stuff as just being beneficial.
Yeah, for sure. And it also gives me an excuse to like get to know the people I'm working with more. Like a lot of it is online, email and text, and we'll have FaceTime conversations here and there, but to be able to sit down like this and like have a full-on discussion, I think it helps build relationships, and it's also just fun to be able to talk about what you're into. So I think it's really cool, and appreciative of podcasts like yours, and anyone who does something like that.
No, thank you. No, this whole thing is very therapeutic for me. People don't understand, just being able to, because I love to talk. Like my buddy Andy and Nate, I'm sure they get annoyed with me calling them, because I'll text whatever, that's fine. But I'd much rather have a conversation. So I get to annoy them a lot. But it's cool to have an outlet like this, where that's like, this is the thing we're talking for some odd amount of time, and it's very fun for me to do. So I'm happy that it's been able to like inspire other things.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, well, Jonathan, this has been really awesome. I'm happy to finally been able to have you on the podcast, and get to know the label better, get to know you better. But before we sign off, is there anything else you would like to say?
Yeah. First of all, thank you, Jamie, for having me on. Thank you for anyone who's listening. And I mean, if you are new to Sunday Drive, or haven't gotten the chance to like listen to anyone, you can find all of our stuff on sundaydriverecords.bandcamp.com. I think that's the easiest place to go, just because everything, like I mentioned, is linked there, so you can find out like all the bands and support them directly. We're also on Instagram, Sunday Drive Records. Also just started like a TikTok recently, so if you're into TikTok, I've been trying to make videos like record showcasing records, also talking about books and stuff. So like you mentioned, other avenues just to like introduce like our world, or like our interests, to other people, and help people connect with similar interests. That's been what I've been really into all these years, and trying to put like more work into that. So yeah.
All right. Well, I appreciate your time. Thank you again. Thanks to everybody who tuned in, and we'll be back soon.